Welcome to Squatch-D TV. Exploring the Bigfoot mystery each week with your hosts, veteran researcher, author, and TV personality, the Squatch Detective, Steve Kulls, and from the Bigfoot Research Project of Kentucky, Chris Bennett. Sit back and buckle up as we bring you guests from around North America discussing the Bigfoot phenomena, but not without a few laughs, too. Here are your hosts, Steve and Chris.
And good evening, cyberspace. Welcome to Squatch-D TV for today's date, December 10th, 2023. I'm your host, your guide, the Squatch Detective, Steve Kulls, along with my co-host right down there, Mr. Chris Bennett. Hello, Chris. How are you tonight?
I'm doing good, man. Enjoying this weather. You know, we started getting some tornado warnings here yesterday.
I heard that.
That's not good.
Well, we're going to get high winds starting at 1 a.m. tonight.
Yeah, it used to be, we only got tornadoes like during the spring, and now they're hitting it more and more in the wintertime now.
Now, that's because we got that warm spell.
Yeah.
I mean, right now it's 45 degrees.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And, today it got up to like 55, which is for December 10th. That's kind of
that's
strange.
That's all right. You know, I don't mind mild weather.
I just don't like the power outages and the
wind.
Yeah. But knock wood, we've been pretty lucky here. So, and of course, tonight we have, wrong way, that way. Over there we have Erik, and over there we have Matt. Welcome aboard from Central Florida Bigfoot. You've seen him in the chat causing chaos every once in a while. And, I heard he's joining the Olympic cyclist team.
Crash and burn team.
I'm so sorry, brother. Anyway, we're gonna be talking about Erik's documentary and about the Florida Skunk Ape, searching for Skunk Ape, Florida's Bigfoot. And I've had a chance. I've actually watched it a couple of times already, just to make sure I didn't miss any notes. I know Chris has watched it.
Oh yeah, it's great.
It's great. It's really spot on, and we'll be doing that. But of course, the first thing we always do here is we go down our roll call in chat, and here we go. So first, and guess what, Chris?
Wow, yeah, the chat is hopping.
There it is.
Yeah.
And of course, first in tonight is Tennessee Cherokee. Hello. He turned the lights on for everybody.
Cherokee, welcome.
Channel member Lowrider in the house.
Lowrider.
Max Powers, who was in the documentary as well. He got in there to get a good seat. Wow. Max is in.
Man. Good to see you, man.
B. Lynn, of course.
Hi, B.
One of our moderators and channel members here. Mr. Federal 2505, Mr. 2505 Federal in the house. Going down, Daniel Weeks in the house. Hello, Daniel.
Good to see you.
We got Sharon. We got channel member Randy Simpson. Welcome, Randy. Thanks for being a member. Grasshopper, just Steve, also a channel member. Hello. Welcome and thank you. Jay Fritz, another one of our members, and Bigfoot Witness. Great guy. Gary Johnson, Uncle Bones, and Chris is here, who's screaming for the Snapple already.
Okay, I'm lost now.
Let's see. Channel member Pat Collins on there again. Thanks for being a channel member. Arthur Watch is in the house. Arthur. Brian McMahon. Brian, what's going on?
Brian? Arthur?
Getting there. Another channel member, Helton, aka Faster Man, in the house. Hello, Helton. Good to see you, sir.
Faster Man.
And going up there's
okay. Well, I've reached the bottom here, but I don't know where.
Well, I see Jeremiah's in the house.
Jeremiah, welcome.
Welcome.
I get lost about halfway through and start moving on me,
and the strange thing tonight is for whatever reason we do not have a stream count tonight. Usually I can see how many people are, watching the stream, but it's not there tonight. Oh, maybe that's why.
It's the Men in Black. Sure.
Oh, there's the stream count. All right. Yeah. Because I didn't save that. I adjusted our perspectives a little bit, so our screens are a little bit bigger on myself and Chris's side, because we were kind of tiny and cut off there for a second. So
That's okay. You can make my screen smaller, Steve. The people at home won't mind at all.
We're all at home.
we're all at home. But anyway, let's get into the program now. We'll start with Erik. Erik is a great documentarian, and as you can all remember, and I'm sure this is going to make it in his new documentary, which we'll get to towards the end. But as we remember, Erik was the gentleman who got this clip.
I really don't. I hope it's not a freaking bear, man. It just got brighter too. Because we had a run-in with a bear out here last year, so this is kind of fresh in my mind.
Well, I lost the eye shine now.
So ready? I'll show you where the eye shine is. Ready?
Oh
See
yeah,
it?
there
See
you go.
that? It is sitting. It's standing right there. All right, so check this out. What the hell was that? Oh. Okay, ready? So look up. Come stand over where I am. So you see where Evan is? See that object behind him?
Oh yeah.
That is something, and like that's where that eye shine is. See that? I don't know what that is.
No shit.
It looks like it's like something on fours though. It hasn't moved the entire time. That's what I don't get.
Yeah, that's the weird thing.
But I mean, you can see its freaking eyes right there. I don't know. I mean, my thought was a rock, because rocks sometimes they gain.
Drop that on you.
Oh yeah, no worries. But I don't understand what the heck it's doing.
I mean, it's not I don't know what eye shine a bear returns.
It's either the most patient bear in the world, or some kind of a stone with reflectors on it. It's glowing more brightly than most stones I've seen.
It looks orange.
I mean, it's like as orange as Evan is.
Yeah, no, that is it's more orange than he is.
Dude, did you just hear that?
Yep.
Yeah.
And there you have it.
Cool.
And we'll be talking more about that later, but I'm hoping to see the video side of that as well with that audio. That's going to be pretty cool. And it was just, thank you for sending that to me. That was, like I said, was like one of the greatest audio captures I've ever heard and maintained, that actually where we had audio recording. So hats off to you, sir, for getting that.
Oh,
And-
thanks, man.
And a quick question, how did you start? You know, I know you're into filmmaking. That's your business. How did you get into getting, spun off on the Bigfoot topic and other topics like this?
Well, I kind of just cover a variety of subjects. I've made documentaries about history and some interviews with homeless folks. Years ago, there was a group of people living in a train tunnel in New York City. So I went down there and was able to see a couple of the kind of bunkers that these folks had turned into houses. Basically just whatever kind of piques my interest. And I always kind of been interested in, the Loch Ness Monster and kind of the typical in search of topics from, the old Leonard Nimoy show. I used to love that when I think that probably was actually off the air before I was old enough to be watching television, but all the reruns I loved growing up. And
You're old enough to remember the reruns. I was old enough to remember the original run.
But yeah, I love that, all of those types of things, Stonehenge, anything mysterious, who, what are the pyramids really? Tombs, that type of thing, all of those ideas. And I was going to be in Florida, and I decided, what, I don't know that much about the skunk ape, but I've always heard about it, so let me try to learn more about it and reach out to some folks, and it turned out to be Matt, and see if I can learn more from people who are more knowledgeable on the topic than I am. And kind of the interesting thing is, I've over the years since I was young. I've watched easily dozens of documentaries about Bigfoot. And then it turned out that as I was making this documentary, it's like, wow, I really don't know anything about this topic, you know? And I was kind of shocked by how much, or how little, I should say, I knew. I knew the broad strokes, but so many documentaries just kind of rehash the Patterson Gimlin footage or the same kind of stories. Like, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the episodes I've seen of that show, Monster Quest, but a lot of those episodes are kind of remakes of In Search of. So I kind of wanted to try a different approach, and it, present it as what I'm learning about the topic, and people following my journey of learning, which a big part of that was linking up with Matt and his group of friends, Max and Brian and Ron and Lori, who were all nice enough to welcome me into their group for a few days. But I kind of wanted to make the type of thing that I would want to watch, that it wasn't like the typical thing that I've seen on television where, um, it's funny, like the audio clip you just played, that if what I made was a weekly television show, that would be in every single episode of the show, with people saying, "Did you just hear that?" And it's like, that's for a future documentary that I'm going to be editing. But I mean, I think I've interviewed over 11 people for that documentary, and that's the first and only kind of audio that, well, that's not necessarily true, but still, over a period of months, I was filming this off and on, and I've only got like one thing that was a mysterious howl that can't be like, oh, that's probably a coy wolf or some sort of coyote dog hybrid or something like that.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I just wanted to take a more, kind of celebrating the mystery approach of it, as opposed to I'm trying to actually solve something or prove or disprove. I just wanted to learn about it. I think it's a fun topic and fascinating, and meet some folks who, like I said, are more knowledgeable on the subject. And, in the case of Brian, a gentleman who shares his encounter in the documentary, just kind of speak to someone who's had an encounter with something that they just can't explain. And for him, I love the way he says it in the documentary. He can't say it's Bigfoot, but he can't think of what else it could be. And I kind of love that mindset of it. He saw something. That's the only thing that makes sense.
That's what makes this, I think, a really refreshing type of documentary. Is it for the advanced group? Maybe not, but it's good for us to watch this, because this is really a good template that, you're not showing these world famous cases that everybody knows about and that's been rehashed. You're showing what's really going on in America in a realistic way, rather than a tabloid type of exposure to it. And I think that's really, I mean, for me, that's the kind of things I like to see. Your interviews with Matt and Max and Brian, and I know Lori didn't come on, but with those three, especially with Brian, and talking about his father and what his father had said to him. And I don't want to give that away. I mean, that was like, wow. I mean, this is what goes on that people don't know about. That's never shown on these other shows that want to bring back a viewer every week, or go on, try to grab grab headlines using the old stuff. I think this stuff is more headline grabbing than that stuff now. But
yeah, well, one thing I found interesting is, as I started digging in and exploring the topic of the skunk ape, and now I've been exploring sightings and encounters in and around upstate New York, is how many people have had an encounter, and in a lot of cases never told anyone other than maybe their spouse, a couple of trusted friends. Like, there's tons of encounters out there that people are having that they don't want to be ridiculed, and they don't, or even if they don't want to be ridiculed, they don't want the publicity, and that I find is, I can completely understand why they don't want publicity, or certainly to be ridiculed. But I found that kind of interesting. Like you said, a lot of the stories that are on, and admittedly, I haven't seen that many of the current weekly Bigfoot shows, or probably any of them. The last one I probably watched was Monster Quest, but that was a fun show. I enjoyed it. But at the same time, some of those stories, whether I'd seen it first there or had seen it first somewhere else, or maybe Monster Quest did some of the stories first, and then there have been several other documentaries, including those stories that I've seen since. I would like to try to hear new stories and kind of. I appreciate the sense of discovery with when I'm making a documentary. For me, it's like I'm discovering the subject as I'm researching it. I'm discovering the subject as I'm filming it. I'm interviewing people. I'm learning new things, which then could potentially lead to more research. And then there's also a third point of discovery when I'm actually editing it. Then I say, oh my God, I've got all this footage. How can I put this together and have it make sense?
Yep.
The thing with Doug was doing the Monster Quest series, he would get out and beat the bushes and find new witnesses that nobody had ever heard from or didn't know anything about their encounter and was totally new, and he would put that in the documentary. But granted, they did do a deep dive episode on like the Patterson Gimlin film and all that. But to me, man, I think the Patterson Gimlin film has just been beat to death. If you turn on a documentary and it's got Patterson Gimlin in there, if it just shows it and said, yeah, well, it mentions it, that's okay. But there's no need to spend, 45 minutes of an hour-long show talking about that one film clip. It's just, to me, it's been beat to death.
Yeah. Well, I think obviously I don't know any of the people involved with Monster Quest, other than I think Steve was on an episode, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
But other than that, I have no connection. But in a lot of instances, like, the producers and the people actually putting together the show probably had this long list of, hey, here's all our awesome ideas for an episodes. And someone at the network was the only thing they knew about Bigfoot was the Patterson Gimlin thing. And they said, as long as you do an episode on that, we don't care what else you do,
Matt, you had can you give us a little insight on how you connected with Erik and what was your experience like filming with him and such?
Well, when Erik first called me, I thought you or one of the other guys in our circle was punking me. I really, honestly, 100% thought this wasn't real because, you can even ask Erik. He wrote out and sent me this, fairly lengthy email and said, hey, I'm in New York. I got friends and family in Florida. I want to come down here and do a thing on Bigfoot. And I wanted to maybe hook up with you and go out. And I'm like, well, yeah, right. So then I did a little research on Erik. And what I really liked was he had no connection with Bigfoot. And that was the deal for me. And I even ran it by Max. I ran it by Ron and Lori. I said, look at this guy's website. What do you think? I think he could, give the whole topic itself a fair shake. And if he's coming to Florida to do someone and it's not us, then we know what would happen if he landed somewhere else. And so it was kind of like, I almost felt like it was an obligation at some point to help him and give him a fair shake. But I also wanted to, again, that non-Bigfoot connection of if someone, a documentary person would have called me up that was all into Bigfoot, I mean, other than Alex and Small Town Monsters, and I have had a handful of people calling me up wanting to go, and I've turned them all down. The only one I've gone out with is Petikoff, Small Town Monsters, and Erik. And again, Erik kind of rose to the top there on this one, is that he had nothing to do with Bigfoot. So that was the main interest. I researched him. I found out, oh crap, this guy's legit and he's really good. I mean, he was at a level that, okay, this could be really good. And I'm getting old. I'm thought, well, this would be a nice way because I'm documenting everybody else, but no one's really kind of put a stamp on what my journey has been. You know, my going on 4 years now, and I've always said I'm going to end it at 3 or 4 years, and I am under the Bigfoot header. Last 2 months, you guys haven't seen me. I've gone private. I'm also injured. The bike fell I had on the culvert about 2 months ago has totally trashed my right knee. So I'm looking at knee surgery in 6-7 weeks. So that kind of puts the end on it. I also just bought property in Kentucky, looking ahead to a retirement. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Don't know yet. Not given a date, so don't ask. But we bought an 1.25 acres up in Paint Lick, and it's beautiful. And it's just sitting there waiting on us. But going back to Erik and his story, I mean, that's what did it. And we just started exchanging emails, and then it would happen so fast. I think, Erik, wasn't it like 2 months? You were ready. You're like coming down.
Yeah.
And so I had a spot in the corridor where there is a campsite where we could go. And in Florida, you can only book 30 days out. And he's calling me 2 months out. So we had to like mark our calendars on this date, call to get this spot. And the spot we picked was one of the spots that is connected to, well, they're all connected, but easily connected to, depending on how much time he had, we could kayak. Depending on how much time he had, we could go off trail. Depending on how much time he had, we could hammock camp pretty far out. Yeah. But Erik's original email said, I want to do a 10 to 15 minute documentary on you. And the first thing I came back to him and said, well, you know, I'm in my 3rd year and something happened to me about 6 months in that I've never been solo since. And I said, so I'm not going to go out and distort the picture that I'm some, you know, Les Stroud solo guy and I can go out there and do all this. That I usually go out with people I trust. And if you don't mind them going, I can call and see if they're available. If it's 2 or 3 or 4, great. And they all came, which was really cool. And Ron and Lori, it was out of their area because they're more the green swamp, not over here in the corridor. So it meant a lot having, you know, Max fly down, and Brian and I was pretty much set because we know what we're doing in the corridor. We have a plan. Erik's time was very limited. What turned into be a 10, 15 minute documentary turned into a 40-minute documentary, and what turned into be a 3 or 4 hour let's go out and that's all the footage he needed turned into be a 2-day overnight because he really had a good time. And by then we were putting out trail cams and doing some night work off trail. But for the most part, it was in the corridor in a safe area. And so that's the only point I'm bummed about is that we are on a trail in an area at this point. But that's you guys know that's not the way Brian and I roll or Ron and Lori. So there was no time, and I didn't know what gear. I didn't know Erik yet. I didn't know what kind of gear or how he worked. I didn't know if he was going to have gimbals, if it was a battery situation. And then he started talking about bringing another documentary photographer down. So it got very complicated. We kept it very simple just to let him do his base story. And what was nice is I knew Lori, Max, and Brian have encounters to tell. And so I said, and of the group, 3 out of the 5 of us have had encounters. So I think I can give you everything you really need because I was throwing out a couple other names. You know, it wasn't just, you know, my group. I gave him some ideas of who I would include. And I guess he felt he had enough for what we were doing. So I appreciate him coming down. I've gotten to know him. He's a great guy. Max and Ron and Lori actually already have been up to his area. And so we've built a friendship where we're going out now. We're talking about something next year early, and we're trying to put together something, and he's included in that. So he's a part of the team, virtual team that, you know, whoever can get together at a given notice, we call people that we know we can trust and keep what they're hearing, you know, to the group itself, you know, not just kind of go all over with it.
Yep. And I know Erik is relatively close to me. And of course, we've done some filming together and he's welcome to come along with anything we do.
Thanks. Yeah, I want to say one thing. I'm probably, the next documentary I'm working on will probably be the last thing I do on Bigfoot for a while. If I was to do anything else, I always tell my wife, I'm like, I'm just floored and blown away by just how genuinely friendly and welcoming everybody is. Like, I want to touch, Matt was super nice to organize a group, his friends, so that I had the opportunity to interview more people than just Matt. And the second, day that morning when I woke up, everybody's we're with our camp stoves cooking breakfast. And at a certain point, I was like, "Oh, you idiot! I'm supposed to be filming these people, not just hanging out shooting the shit with them." We were having such a good time, just goofing around and chatting, sharing stories and stuff.
Well, I hopefully we showed you at least some of the same courtesy. I know good Southern hospitality, and
man.
I hope, and that's why that night we were going out. I said, "Hey, you're going to come out with us after the festival, right? Because that's what we usually do." And
again, that was a great group. I mean, shit, there was like 11 people there. Like, just everybody super cool, super friendly, and some people had different tactics or strategies, methods of searching, however you want to say it. And everybody was cool and respectful of and learning about, how does that work? How does that work? And, like Alex, that was the first time I had met him. He's super nice, and everyone's sharing their thermal, eyepieces. Like, hey, look at this. Do you see anything over there? Just super fun,
And what I liked about that was everybody has their own different thing, and they let everybody do what they need to do. But when it came time to let's test a few things and let's see if we can debunk this, we all came together and worked as a team.
Yeah,
and that was the fun. That was really the cool thing about it.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about Bigfoot research. You go out into the woods where nature's at, and what's the worst thing going to happen? Okay, you're going to spend a couple of days out in nature and enjoy yourself. Could hit the lottery, and you might see one. You never know.
And
good people.
There's Alex in chat there too. Erik felt like a natural with the rest of the crew.
Alex. Oh, what's up, Alex? Thank you. Yeah.
And we have somebody from Don Gumau Jr. from Sasquatch Research Maine. Welcome, sir. Welcome. Good to see the new name. Every once in a while, we see a new name there in the chat. We want to say hello to him.
Speaking of your chat, I saw, this is completely unrelated to Bigfoot, but somebody commented way earlier about they had seen a skunk. Does that count? Just a random side story. Last summer, there was a family of 5 skunks living under the deck to the downstairs apartment. So my wife and I, we would have dinner right at dusk out on our deck and basically like do a stakeout to catch all the family of skunks coming out to go, feed and forage for food in the backyard at night. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
It only counts if you see a skunk and an ape, then it would count. And looking in the mirror doesn't count.
Skunks are, I don't know if I would want to research skunks. They're kind of be pretty easy to find them though. They're pretty stinky.
Well, if I don't trim up here, I'm going to look like the guy on my poster image there. My beard gets a little runs rampant.
Which reminds me to my next point too is that I mean throughout your whole documentary, I mean how many documentaries talk about trichinosis? And you mentioned that the covering of the hair. You mentioned that in your documentary. I mean, there's so many different points. One of the most poignant things you pointed out, I think in the document, was the ludicrousy of the bear study. And you had made mention of, the next 3 states that have the most amount of Bigfoot sightings being Florida, Ohio, and Illinois, and their bear populations. And the amazing thing is their bear populations are all smaller than that of New York.
Well, that was what led me to thinking about that. I was actually in Florida. I think it was like a day or two before I was going to go meet up with Matt and Ron and Lori and Brian and Max, and just looking stuff up, and I came across this study, and all of a sudden, the funny thing is, and someone even like left a review on the documentary saying my biggest takeaway was learning that there was bears in Florida. And that was basically what I was like, wait, there's bears in Florida? Everybody knows of alligators and, cottonmouths and manatees and stuff like that. But I looked it up and I was like, oh shit, like they actually have a decent bear population. So then I started comparing it to New York. And then once I started thinking about it more, and, I think Florida does have more people than New York. So they have more people to potentially have a skunk ape sighting, but it's not that many more people. And in New York, I think we have about twice as many bears, but half as many Bigfoot sightings.
6,000 to 8,000 bear in New York.
Yeah, I don't remember what the Florida number was. I want to say it was maybe 4,000, but
yep. So that would mean if you were looking at that study, we should be having more Bigfoot sightings than Ohio or Florida, but we don't. So that's where that study kind of errs. But
yeah, well, that guy, after looking, that I started feeling like that section was getting, it was tough trying to navigate getting all the pertinent information, but also keep it engaging enough to keep people interested in watching it. I did find out, I don't recall if it was before or after I had made the documentary, that data scientist or whoever did that study had also done one trying to debunk the
Nessie.
Loch Ness Monster
Nessie,
sightings. Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, he just had a viral moment and decided to try to replicate it,
Right.
But it's like, well, if you're basically ignoring obvious things like the fact that the state with the fifth most sightings, Illinois, has no bears in it, your study is immediately, bogus.
Yep.
Right.
Yep, that's a big problem.
Yeah. I certainly acknowledge that and am willing to.
I mean, I'm sure Ohio has a bear or two that crosses the line from Pennsylvania into Ohio.
Oh yeah,
because bears don't recognize borders, but
yeah,
they're moving in from Michigan or what have you.
Well, like in Kentucky, we've got a lot of bears over on the eastern part of Kentucky, but over in the western part of Kentucky, you won't see one. I mean, they're very, very few and far between, but every now and then one will come over in the middle where I'm at, and then it's a big deal. People, start to making videos. Hey, look, it's a bear, but everybody knows it's a bear. I mean, nobody's filming it saying, "Look, it's Bigfoot." No, it's a bear.
Yeah.
Now we do have a question from our friend Kaiju Ninja 1985. What are Erik's thoughts on the Skunk Ape? After filming the documentary.
Oh, that's I mean, honestly, I'm undecided still. I think that after speaking with Brian and Lori and Max, Max's encounter was in New England, so I guess that is separate. But I mean, I believe they saw something. I don't know what it was. Based on their descriptions, it sounds like the skunk ape or, what we would commonly think of as Bigfoot. But unfortunately, I do have the mindset of like seeing is believing type of thing. And I believe there's all sorts of weird stuff out there. There's that anecdote that I told in the documentary about seeing a glowing orb fly in front of my car. It was different than the way I animated it in the film, but it basically looked like that glowing orb. I have no idea what that was, All I can do is describe it and create it with visual effects on the computer to like, okay, this is roughly what it looked like. But yeah, I don't know what it is that people are seeing, but I do believe a lot of them are seeing something. Certainly some people could have mistaken a bear or that famous sighting in Ocheezy Pond, that maybe was just a person with hypertrichosis. But it also could be some, unknown hominid or other creature that we just haven't discovered yet for whatever reason, or maybe it was a genetic mutation, or there's all sorts of possibilities. So the only thing that I have determined for myself is that, as it relates to this documentary, the folks that I've spoken to, I believe that they saw what they said they saw,
I think that's great, and that's why I enjoyed your documentary more, Eric, than any other documentaries that I've seen in a long time, is because you put it out there with a healthy dose of skepticism, and it's you're really a healthy skeptic when it comes to Bigfoot. You're not just a denialist. If you were a denialist, you wouldn't even be interested in the subject. You'd say, "Well, it doesn't exist," and then that's that.
So our friend Jen from Ohio says we have bears, and it's true. A to Z Animal says about bears in Ohio. It says, although bears disappeared from the state many over 100 years ago, bear sightings increase yearly. Today, approximately 50 to 100 black bear live throughout the eastern part of the state. While most of these bears are on the smaller side, a few bears may yet roam the Ohio countryside. So yeah, they're bears, but they're very, very few in numbers.
Yeah, it seems strange for Ohio, having 50 to 100 bears to have over 300 sightings,
Right.
But again, as I mentioned earlier, I put for this next documentary I'm working on, excuse me, I posted a thing on a Facebook group of all places that wasn't related to Bigfoot. It was related about the history of upstate New York. And within an hour, I had at least a dozen people messaging me their stories, and unfortunately, not all of them were willing to talk on camera. I got two people who want to remain anonymous and hide their identity, which I'm cool with. I understand. But none of those encounters are on the BFRO website. And one of the gentlemen who was nice enough to share his story, I actually edited a short, like 8-minute documentary and put it on my YouTube channel about his encounter. His was in the local news up in the St. Lawrence Valley. And it's like, okay, this guy was on the local news. The local PBS did a thing about it, and it's still not on the BFRO. I don't think there's a.
Well, the only
It's
way
not
for
like it's not like it's not like it's the FBI and they have funding to go out and follow anything up.
Well,
it's like a
the other thing too is the person
right?
actually has to report it to the BFRO for
Yeah.
and somebody has to investigate it and approve it to actually be on the site. So there's a multitude. There's a lot of sighting reports on the BFRO system that haven't been investigated, and that's why they're not on the site. So,
well,
I have
I
have six people that's reached out to me over the last 2 years to tell me within 5 miles of where I took Erik, there have been 5 additional Bigfoot sightings that are not on the Bigfoot mapping project. Yeah. 2 of them are. So, and then there's an additional one where he said it wasn't a Sasquatch, it wasn't a bear, it was a chimpanzee, or I'm sorry, orangutan, the 4-foot tall ones. He said it jumped the fence and ran across the street. And I said, well, how big was it? He said about 4 feet. I said, what time of day? He goes, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I was taking my daughter home, and it was right just north of the corridor in an area where the Hillsborough River kind of takes a bend and goes up around some Crystal Springs, an area where they basically bought the property, bottling water springs type deal.
Oh, yeah.
And you can't get in there per se. That's one area we were kind of looking at, and it's only accessed through the river if you're on the river. But then again,
perfect.
It's not maintained. So the river's so unmaintained that you can't basically get on it and keep moving through it unless you're totally getting out of the boat constantly and dragging it over trees and walking on gators and that sort of thing. So there's been a lot of stuff here. And the day I recorded or called the park ranger when I said, you're not going to believe this, but I saw a black panther off trail by a primitive camp, and here's where I was. I told him exactly where I was.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, well, did you get a picture of it? And I said, well, I had my GoPro on my chest. I think I got it, but I didn't. That's when I moved my GoPro to my head and started wearing it as a helmet cam. And 2 weeks later, we catch the buck charging us. But he goes, well, it wouldn't surprise me. We had a bear run across the road here too, and we're not supposed to have a lot of bears. So it's a crazy area. And you all saw my trail cams with the bobcats that I'm getting in one part of the corridor, where I got these 2 or 3 different bobcats over and over and over, to the point where I know their hunting pattern. I know when they cross over, they cross back, totally oblivious to the camera. And I have probably 16, 15-second clips of these guys. One of them looks like it's wearing a radio collar. I can't quite tell.
It might be tagged.
Yeah, that it might be tagged, but the other ones aren't. So, but there's also the possibility of, you hear these zoo animals escapes and hurricanes, and there's been, wild cat rescues and all sorts of things in Central Florida that, my mind is, are we seeing some of these animals just simply got out? Like the Myakka one, it does not look like a Bigfoot to me, but it does look like, what you would see, yes, in a primate zoo sort of thing. So
question in the chat, is it free on Prime? I think it's $2.99 to rent, $9.99 to buy. And that was followed up by, I'm not paying to see Matt.
what you're paying to see is a artistic presentation of Matt. Matt, I wanted to follow up what you were saying about the bobcat with the collar on it.
There he is.
Again,
this is what I want for Christmas.
I did a video.
A new gimbal, a new GoPro.
I did a video of a sea turtle like tag and release a while ago, and there, out on Long Island, I can't remember the name of the place. Like the rehabilitation center that was nursing the turtles back to health. But anyway, they actually have a website where you can go and follow the GPS data to see the route. It might be interesting if you could find somewhere in your area to maybe identify that, and then you could at least get an idea of where is the wildlife exactly going, at least in the case of that one bobcat.
Right. Yep. I will. Especially since I'm going to be laid up for a while. I'm not going anywhere for about 4 months. Tate, I hate you. And yes, I have your hot dog poker right here. If anybody wants to buy it at the end of the show, I stole Tate's hot dog poker. It's right here. I'll find it here. It's hanging up here.
Oh, we can do an auction, a silent auction.
Sure. Sure. Let me go find it. It's around here somewhere.
He said something about you straight up punching him in the nose for it.
No, we got in a hot dog fight.
Touched me in my nose and stole my hot dog roaster.
Yeah, no, that's not me. But we were out on the Green Swamp video that Alex did, and Alex and Eli broke off with Ron and Lori, and I was with.
Your first bids come in. 12-pack of Milwaukee's best.
Oh, great. So I was with Tate, and we were out there, and my stomach just started growling like it usually does. And I said, man, I'm hungry. I could use some hot dogs. And all of a sudden, here are, 3 people out at dark, with, night vision and thermal vision. And we're all like standing in a group with our red lights on going, yeah, I could use a hot dog.
Yeah.
Could you use a hot dog? What do you put on your hot dog? And I said, ketchup, mustard, relish. He goes, oh, no, not ketchup. Nobody puts ketchup on their hot dog. So we got into this big thing on how to dress a hot dog. But Tate has this hot dog game he plays at camp with. He ties it to a rope and they try to catch it. Anyway, it's a long story.
From when I heard you go over to Biscardi's camp, he plays the same game with Snapple. Anyway.
Why is it that nobody will ever eat a hot dog when they're at home, but when you go out in the woods or something, that seems to be one of the first things you
get me a
you
Snapple.
want to.
Joan, get me a Snapple.
Hey, let's cook
Joan,
us
get
some.
me a Snapple. Joan, get me a Snapple.
Is like every time I come back from a camping trip, I wind up, like you said, I buy a pack of hot dogs, and then I don't want to throw food out, so I wind up
Right.
having to eat half a pack of hot dogs the following week.
Oh, where is that poker at?
Well, everybody, that's when everybody goes camping, they get the cheapest hot dogs they can get. You get the $1.29 Walmart ones where and where me, I'm more sophisticated. I usually get Sabrett's or Nathan's or
We got Bar S in Kentucky, baby. Bar S hot dogs.
Bar S.
Bar S, yeah. Come from Save a Lot. I don't know what kind of discount grocery stores you guys got in New York, but
made with lips and beaks.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. Let's get back to the channel here. Let's get back to. We always tend to go off on tangents. and do you always notice that we always go off on tangents on food on this channel?
Yeah.
That's why we're all framed up from the chest up.
Vault of BS. I think that's done. Just $2 for Tate's Hot Dog Roaster. That's right.
Okay,
you can get it now for $2, but shipping and handling is $29.99.
We got to straighten up and talk about Bigfoot now. You got to kill me.
So, yeah, we got all thrown off course. Now, the cool thing is that you, Matt, is that what I like is you're looking at a choke point in your research area, the corridor.
Correct.
And that's very, to me, and it's kind of, and I don't know if Erik saw the similarities between Whitehall, New York being a choke point between two forests, and similar to what you have down there with the choke point down there in Central Florida.
I heard you talk about it. It's very, very similar. And I tell you, since I started focusing on the choke point, Brian and I both have seen more tracks, more prints, the whole rushing of the buck sort of thing, the black cat. I'm not going to say it's a panther, but I know it was a panther. We're seeing more and more in the corridor, and we're not running into other people either. That's the joy of it. It's spread out enough over 50, 60 miles that 3 groups could be in there and you'll never see each other. There's many entrances to it. It's the navigating with kayaks is the trick. And then finding out where the connecting between different management areas are, which is what we've figured out.
And hello to Brian and Chewy Go Hiking.
Brian, thanks, man.
Member for the last 6 months, and we always thank you, brother.
Yeah.
And of course, to our good canine friend, Chewy. And may I make a mention too? Our newest channel member, Tom Conley.
Tom, welcome.
And newest member, thank you, sir. And deep fried hot dogs wrapped with bacon. I cannot disagree, or I cannot agree more. Actually, that sounds delicious.
Yeah. I get clogged up eating that, but it's good.
Matt, are you still pretty much working the area that you took me to, or have you? I know you said you had a couple of entry points along that same corridor.
Yeah, what we couldn't show you is we ended up taking Erik to a base camp situation, and where you can only get into the base camp if you rent the campground. If you're otherwise, you're back on the road a mile. In some cases, other places, it's 3 miles back to where you would normally camp at a primitive camp. But in this situation, we were probably half mile, 3/4 mile in. And the other places were just on the other side of the gate. Sometimes there's a campground. And then there could be a loop road that you can't get a car back there, but you can walk this loop road, and it's 3 miles out and then 3 miles back. And 6 miles is a ways in Florida. But what Brian and I are doing, to answer your question, is we were using the e-bikes to take these Jeep trails out 3-4 miles where the hikers go. And then we're crossing rivers, carrying across creeks. We're finding low points in the river. We're crossing those and going 2 or 3 miles out. And at that point, we run into absolutely nobody. We can cross a plain of palmetto 4 feet high. The palmetto then goes into a wood line. You're into the wood line, and then you all of a sudden you're on the river. You know, it's just crazy. So we're either dumping e-bikes or we're dumping kayaks and pushing further. And that's stuff I picked up from Ron and Lori. I mean, they do that every day. So I wasn't really an off-trail guy, but the last year and a half, we've been pretty much off-trail, 90%. And that's when I started obviously finding more stuff and hearing more stuff. I have howls recorded that I have vetted. I have the impression I have that is vetted to a point. But now I'm to the point that I'm backing off on this sort of thing and my own channel. I'm just out there to steal Ron's line. I mean, I'm stealing Ron's line 100%. I'm just going out and enjoying myself. But in my situation, opposite of Ron's, he's just going out with his wife, and they're going out at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, or staying out that long and going back because they live near the Green Swamp. In my case, it's a 40-minute drive. So I'm just getting out there when I can and enjoying nature. And I'm going as a photojournalist loaded with cameras. I have night vision. I have thermal vision. I roll all the time. I usually have an iPhone. I have moved away from the gimbal and the Lumix. That might people. Because once you go off trail, it's like buying a computer. What are you doing with the computer? Well, I want to do audio. Well, then you can buy a different type computer. You could probably do it on a notebook. Well, I'm getting into video. All of a sudden, what you need to buy for a computer changes drastically with what you need to produce video. So now that we're going off trail, I'm moving to a helmet cam, handheld iPhone on cinematic mode, and audio recorder. Who's trolling? Oh, gimbal. No, we're not drinking on gimbal, Max. The new word is hot dog. But anyway, the gimbals don't work. The weird, big Lumix. Weird. The big gimbals are, and as Erik can attest to, I think the day we took you out, because we were doing with you and I wasn't really working per se like I would normally work, I had my Lumix on a monopod. I don't know if you noticed. I did not pull out the gimbal. And I was working with the Lumix, an audio recorder, and an iPhone set on cinematic mode. But I was still rolling 2 devices all the time. Yeah, I'm not going to miss anything. So I don't like...
You said gimbal again.
I'll say for myself, like I have a gimbal as well. But for kind of for what I'm doing with my documentary, I actually prefer the monopod. For one thing, you don't have to actually carry it. You can rest it on the ground so your arms don't get as tired. But then also a little bit of handshake kind of adds to the aesthetic and the immediacy to, help the viewer feel like you're walking. In the instance of the Skunk Ape documentary, it helps them feel like you're walking through the woods with, you and Brian and Max, and then, Ron and Lori, who, are filmed from much further away because they preferred not to be shown on camera. But, it helps to basically drive that aesthetic, kind of like the same thing they overdid it in the Bourne Ultimatum. But, that kind of thing where it's like, the handheld adds to the dynamic feeling of the filming,
Well, I would agree with you, but
it's going to make for a shitty Bigfoot photo for sure.
Well, that's exactly it. My only interest is 15 seconds, 30 seconds of moving footage. That's all I live for. So I learned after a year and a half to get, like on Nikki's show earlier, we were showing all these pareidolia still photos. I learned long ago, and Steve put it, it was the Buckwash crew put it very succinctly, that even if that was a Bigfoot, it wouldn't prove anything. It wouldn't mean anything. it wouldn't add to any evidence or data or that sort of thing. So what I started doing, Erik, is that whatever camera I use, I'll test it here first, walking around, doing, moving like I would move. And then I would throw it on the timeline, and I'm constantly throwing it on the timeline and hitting space bar, pause, run it, pause, run it, pause. I don't want any of this stuff going on. I want clear 1080p still frame of everything I'm getting, or 4K. So once I realized that the GoPro 9 with the mod lens is it's unbelievably steady. You can throw that on your timeline and just hit pause anywhere, and every frame is a printable frame. There's not going to be any of this blurred crap and blob squatch and all that. I'm way past even showing anything like that. I kind of did about 6-7 months ago when I saw movement to a place and I had a blob squatch, and you pointed out one that my trail cam captured, and I pointed it out to you. But it's like looking at footprints. Footprints have a lot of pareidolia too. And if it's not easily, I get so frustrated watching films where they go, yeah, that could be a print. Okay, the word you just say could be a print, move on. Why are we standing here? Why are we shooting it? Move on. I'm not interested in any could be, would be, might be. Right. I just simply learned to move on. I want 15, 30 seconds of footage. And that's what I concentrate when I'm out there. Even when I stop producing videos for my channel, I will still be running devices, and I will still have that same mindset. I will probably wear a helmet cam until I find another device to do it. But if I'm trying to help people capture this thing, I need to help share best practices of what I'm learning as a photojournalist and you as a filmmaker to do it on. I love the Les Stroud monopod, tripod. He used a tripod on his knee, resting, and I get it. But I guarantee you, if he ever has an encounter or sees something, he's going to miss it because of the way he's doing it. And I just don't want to be that guy.
A bunch of years, probably like, I don't know, 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
My wife and I and a buddy of mine were out back on a short backpacking trip. Some lunatic dragged a canoe to a pond 2 miles out in the middle of the woods. So we go out there and camp out overnight and utilize the canoe. We're out trout fishing, and there was an eagle flying around. I have my camera with me, so I'm trying to snap photos of the eagle, and they're being nice enough to paddle. We're chasing this eagle around the pond. All of a sudden, and I have my camera in my hand, a hawk comes flying out of nowhere, skims the surface, snatches a fish out of the water, and I'm clicking away. I did not get one photo in focus of that hawk. And that's literally, I had my camera in my hand in the act of taking photos of a different bird. Yeah. But in that split second, we know what a hawk looks like. So I could show you the photo and you'd all say, oh yeah, I see what you're saying. But
and yet the skeptics wonder why there isn't a clear picture of a Bigfoot.
Yeah. I mean, shit, I could, if I run into an 8-foot hairy monster in the woods, the last thing I'm thinking of is taking a picture.
And I think Brian made the same point in the documentary as well. And I got to say, Brian's sighting was really phenomenal. I enjoyed listening to it. He comes across with a lot of credibility, sincerity, and to me, I just reading his body language a little bit, I see it bothered him. His sighting actually bothered him for a while, and you can see that.
Yeah, I think Brian's sighting is straight up there with Joe's to me as really and Max sighting with his father. Those three, and Lori's with the crossing, because I know Ron and Lori, and I see what they're going through, or what Ron's going through, trying to duplicate it for himself. But those encounters are phenomenal. And the thing that gave me the chill listening to Brian's story is that, and I've never heard anyone bring it up, but when he said, it realized to me that when it turned around, it could care less what I could do to it or not do to it. Right. And that was like, I haven't really heard anyone say it like that. Like, there was no fear in the creature, whatever he stumbled across, that it would think about it. Turn its back on someone as big, and Brian's big. Yeah. Brian's a big guy. And so the fact that he was, 15 feet away and it turns his back on him and just saunters away through the palmetto, that's not easy stuff to walk through. You'll get cut up walking through that. But the way he told that to me, I just went, wow, okay. That was pretty chilling for me hearing that. So I agree with you, Steve, is what I wanted to say.
Yeah, it's interesting. At this point, at the time that I had filmed, the Searching for Skunk Ape documentary, I had, over my life randomly, encountered other people who had told me once or twice maybe that they had seen something weird in the woods, or, people that have had ghost encounters, or where I grew up in the Hudson Valley, UFOs were really big in the 90s when I was growing up. I was always pissed that I would know people who had seen them and I never got to see one. But now that I've, at this point interviewed even more people, it's like there's some people that I'm skeptical of, and I tell them, I'm not going to be disrespectful, but it's like you let them know, like, I'm a little skeptical of your story. But like Matt had said, like when actually talking to Brian, and I just saw Max say in the chat here, when Lori actually tells you her story firsthand, it's like, yeah, you saw something, like something you could just tell by people's body language and the way they're still trying to process and make sense of what is it that I actually saw, Right. And I can imagine, in Brian's case, with it being such close proximity, like shit, I can see wanting to have that encounter again to get to maybe hope, I imagine he hopes he's going to be a little bit better prepared to at least mentally process it better, if not try to take a photo.
Well, as he told me off camera, he goes, I can definitely identify Bigfoot's ass.
Wow.
Well,
yeah. That's the way you want to see it. You want to see it on the business end. You don't want to see it facing you, because that's trouble.
I think the first sighting you have, everybody's in shock. You're like, oh my God. And then after you've had that first sighting, then it goes in your mind. It's working overtime. What can I do to document if I have another sighting? And then you get all prepared, and maybe there's a 99.9% chance you'll never have another sighting, but at least now you're prepared for it.
Which to me brings a great point. Matt said that he was never a solo artist going out in the woods by him, not doing it on his own, and I agree with that. Mm-hmm. The number one reason why I try to always take somebody is if something happens, I need another witness, because let's say you're out there by yourself and you see a Bigfoot. Now it's just a story to most people,
right?
But when you have other people that can either corroborate some of the things around it, when I had my sighting, I was by myself, but there were people, 70 feet away, 80 feet away, that by the time they got out there, one had found the scrape, another one had found, another one is saying, hey, I can hear something moving around us. So, and they didn't even know the details of what I had seen or where I had seen it. So, those are the kind of things that kind of help. Like when I had the second sighting, when I got out of my tent the following year, it was again by myself. But then one guy finds a log behind us, another finds the track, at least a good solid track they could cast. And in New York, that's a real tough thing. Is Erik has seen the substrate there. It's really tough to get any kind of track. But and that's the reason why I take people with me, is because if something happens, any one of us, if somebody sees one, we can all start looking to corroborate that. So I think that's the real reason I don't go in solo. And not to mention, if something happens, i.e. taking a spill on a bike, you have friends that can help you out of a situation.
Safety in numbers. Yeah, you gotta watch out for accidents that can happen.
When I wiped out the last time, and it really sticks out in my head. And I was actually mad when he said it, because I knew it. I had already thought about it. But Brian goes, dude, are you okay? because there ain't no one coming out here to get us. And I was like, you don't think I know that? I am trying to. I was doubled over. I could not stand up. We rode about a half mile, and then I went, this leg is hurting so bad. I said, I'm sorry. He goes, what are you doing? I went, I have to drop my pants to make sure I don't have a compound fracture. It hurt that bad. Like, I thought something's not right here because the pain wasn't going away. It was just, you did something real. And then I started looking for blood clots because I'm on a blood thinner.
Sure.
And so I didn't want to hear, dude, are you okay? No. But I laugh about it now, but it's pretty damn scary, you know, and you got to start thinking about stuff like that. And we've had conversations. I mean, Brian's had a couple situations going to get my camera that we tried 4 times to get. He went solo and got it. And he's never told that story yet, but it wasn't an easy trip. And man, I got mad when I found out he did it solo because, you know, it's not an easy feat where we left that camera.
Right.
Well,
And
you know, I think there are points to going by yourself at some depending on the plan you've got. Like, you know, if you're going to take a ghillie suit with you and take that several miles back in the woods and then put on your ghillie suit and sit down next to a tree for 8 hours, you know, that works. But you're in danger because if you're by yourself and in Kentucky, if you get a snake bite, well, guess what? You're walking yourself out of there, pumping that poison through your veins until you get help, if you make it.
Well, I would think also, like, I know for myself, I went out, I don't know, we'll say like mid to late July to a place in the Adirondacks that someone told me they had Bigfoot sightings nearby a bunch of years back now, eight years or more, I think. And it just coincidentally is an area I'm real familiar with. And I actually deer hunt every year there. I didn't get there this year, but, you know, been hunting there for years. I went back there by myself. And then it's like, you know, I've got Bigfoot on the brain. I'm thinking about what this gentleman told me. And my mind started playing tricks on me, you know, and the woods can get super creepy when you're out there by yourself and every little noise, you're like, what in the hell was that? You know? And then, you know, you start to think about it more and it's like, oh, I got an ordinary explanation for that one and for that one and for that one. But I could see how I could let myself get carried away pretty easily if I wasn't constantly trying to debunk myself, you know, or if I hadn't been spending time in the woods ever since I was a kid also, and just wasn't familiar with the noises, you know.
You know,
How many of y'all seen this?
Can you make that bigger, Steve?
Let me see what I can do. Oh, hang on. Let me try here.
I just file it under weird, but it's a dead bird.
Oh, weird.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the perfect way to describe it. Weird.
Not what you really want to find when you're out by yourself, but
hanging upside down.
Yeah.
The only thing I can think of, was there a lightning strike nearby and it was just there and it just, and had it, you know, if you look at its claws, it's wrapped on there and it just did a 180.
Right.
You know what?
In the winter.
The most likely explanation for that is the bird died of natural causes. It just was there and its heart stopped or it had a heart attack or something scared it. And
maybe
because of that, a lot of people don't know in certain types of deaths coming from the medical field, there is if somebody's grabbing on something like instantaneous deaths, especially like in suicide victims, if they're holding on to the item, they got to peel their fingers back to get it out. So obviously if there's a bird's on the branch and it dies suddenly, it'll just, but that's a good reason.
I think a Bigfoot, a Sasquatch walked by and it went, whoa, and it just died.
Pass gas on it.
Yeah.
Well, That probably, the freezing in the winter would probably not be a thing in Florida, but that happens here in Kentucky.
But that's a real good reason. That's a real good reason why we shouldn't go out there solo, because of something where we're having a medical event. And, at our ages, gentlemen, we can have a medical event.
Well, I keep nitro tablets at arm's length at all times. No kidding, right here. Here's a bottle of nitro right here.
I told Brian and I the last time we went out, both of us make a person.
Well, it's good to have somebody out there with you for safety, but I think you could probably do a little bit better on your own. But I had thought having children with you was Max, a bad idea, and that turned out not to be true.
Max made a great point too, that if you do go out by yourself, have an item like the Garmin InReach, where it's a satellite text machine. Where no matter where you are, cell service or not, you can send out an SOS message that can pinpoint you where you are using GPS. And that's really important. And that's a great point, Max. And thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, there was another one I use for when my buddies and I go backcountry skiing, in case, God forbid, one of us gets hurt. I think it's called Spot. And it's a kind of similar thing where, like, I have an older one, but before we go out, I program it, and it's a subscription where I'm covered up to $10,000, the cost of them having to come get my ass off the side of a mountain.
Now, Bill, Finding a Trackway says life alert, but I don't know if that'll work in the middle of the forest unless your name is Mrs. Fletcher. I've fallen and I can't get up.
I don't know if those have GPS on them, though. Maybe, I don't know. That would be a good idea, though. Help me, I'm falling and I can't get up, and there's a Bigfoot coming after me.
And then, I mean, how many hunters do we hear about every year that pass away or they go missing and they're found? Make sure you have your inhaler. Yes,
Nikki, Nikki's make sure you have your inhaler.
When you're at 600 feet, absolutely. If you're going up to high altitude as well, I would recommend having Red Bull or some highly caffeinated beverage on hand, because that will take away elevation sickness as well. I remember going up to the Lucachuk guys, which is 9,100 feet up, and myself, I always was drinking Diet Pepsi. Everybody else was not. They were drinking water.
Yeah.
And everybody was like, "Oh, I don't feel good. I feel nauseous. I got a real bad headache. I'm fine here. Drink a Pepsi."
Yeah.
And that caffeine, a little bit of caffeine, beat it. So if you're going to high elevations, remember to stay caffeinated. It takes away that elevation sickness, believe it or not.
Yeah, well, when you go to the like Peru and Bolivia, the Andean countries, that's why one of the reasons that they cultivate and consider the coca plant so sacred. It's not to make cocaine. They give you the leaves and you chew on the leaves, and it helps with the altitude sickness.
Right. Also helps with a good time too.
Yeah.
And that's funny. This cat named Duke Sullivan, apparently he has a podcast somewhere, who doesn't happen to know me, was out there making the comment that, oh, I should get out in the woods more often. And I kind of chuckle at that, people who make those flyby comments that like, oh, he should get out in the woods more often. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Really? But
well, I mean, it's funny, like as it relates to certainly Bigfoot, I'm not an expert, I'm like, just like I said, I've always had interest in the topic, but I've just looked into it the most over this past year so far. But it really seems like a good deal of sightings are road crossings. Now, granted, that's probably just because that's where the most humans are to have a sighting.
Right.
But I mean, I've been in the woods my entire life, ever since I was a kid. And I've seen more black bears on the side of a ski slope than I have in the woods, And it's like, well, going into the woods doesn't guarantee you're going to see anything.
Right. You know, the interesting thing is, I always bring this up, is that you may not, people say there are no Bigfoot experts. And I agree with that. Amongst ourselves, there are no Bigfoot experts. To the general public, though, expertise is a frame of reference. And I always say that. So while people say, people scoff at somebody getting a headline, oh, Bigfoot expert talks about, that's just the reason why they're calling us an expert is because they have no expertise on the topic at all. It's like a plumber. My sink goes bad or some pipe bursts. I call it an expert. They're called a plumber. But if the plumber goes to a plumbing convention, is he an expert? No, of course not. So that expert is a derivative of expertise, and we all have our expertises. Matt is in photojournalism. Yours is in filmmaking. Mine is in behavior analysis. Chris's is in keeping
hillbilly.
But we, your experiences, and of course, expertise all comes from experiences. So we all have a level of expertise to offer. But to call oneself an expert, and not, in other words, amongst your colleagues, is kind of disingenuous. So I never use that term myself. But if somebody says, hey, he's the expert, I'll have to defer because I know more than they do about a particular topic. So don't ever, everybody wants to put the 4-letter word on the word expert. It's just a frame of reference on people that have less expertise on a topic than ourselves.
Yeah. No, I mean, like when I was, just saying it, kind of like up until, I don't know, January probably of this year, like literally this year, unless I saw about a Bigfoot sighting on television or maybe read in the random article in some newspaper or more likely a website, other than that, I never even bothered to look to learn about Bigfoot sightings more. It was more just like, oh, this is cool. I'll watch this show or this documentary that someone put together and just learn about it from them, and if certain things, like I had come across them, I just never filed it away in my brain, the hard drive space in my head here, about wood knocks and things like that. Maybe I came across it, but it never sunk in until earlier this year when I started making, this Skunk Ape documentary, that, oh, okay, this is something that people theorize about,
and that's because you're gathering expertise. Is that gathering expertise is a lifelong mission. To me, I want to know. That's why there's people, like Don in the chat, or JC. They may have some information that is very pertinent to the mission that I did not know. So amongst each other, we're all colleagues, and we're all trying to build this big information base and try to figure out what the hell, number one, what the hell it is we're dealing with, and two, how to go about proving and putting an end to the mystery, and kind of putting it into the scientist's realm rather than our own. Yeah, I'll take a look at that later.
That'll be interesting.
No,
yay!
But
I'm waiting for Rick Dyer's new stuff to come. Can't wait. It's coming. I know it is.
Now comes the part where we throw our heads back and laugh. Ready?
Ready!
And that's for both of them. He must have came out with a new video, because every once in a while I look at my YouTube analytics, and for some reason the videos on Todd standing on the channel have started to bump up again. So people must be searching his name and going over to my stuff. So very interesting. So let's Erik, what is your new documentary? Can you give us a little hint on?
Yeah, sure. It's primarily about Bigfoot sightings in and around the Adirondacks in northern New York. I shot all of like the primary footage. I still need to get more B-roll and whatnot. I was initially going to aim to have it done by the end of this year, but now I've kind of pushed that back. I'm aiming for the spring just to spend more time with it. I was able to, I think I've interviewed 11 people so far, Steve being one of them. And, that I went to just briefly to I'll cover the Whitehall Sasquatch Calling Festival. And, I feel like that story has been covered enough times that I don't need to try to go in depth into it. I wanted to try to find new encounters that folks weren't familiar with. There's at least 2 people that I'm the first person they've ever shared their story with outside of their spouses. And I just kind of want to explore the topic similar to how I did with the Skunk Ape documentary, with also historical accounts. I mean, I'm going to be wrong on the date, but I want to say the earliest account I've found in northern New York is from 1818.
Correct, Sackett's Harbor, New York. Yep.
Yeah, and then there's another one kind of in that same area, I think a little bit further south. I believe also the 1800s, where I want to say I'll need to reread the newspaper clipping, but they described that basically a hairy wild man, but he had pants on, which I find interesting.
Yeah.
But just kind of the idea in the Adirondacks, I mean, it's 6 million acres, which is the size of Vermont. And it's certainly possible that there's something out there. Like there's an estimated 1,200 moose there, which is a 7-foot tall mammal that I've never seen in the wild. I've come across their hoof prints and scat plenty of times, but I've never actually seen one. So I certainly think it's possible something could be hiding out there. But again, this one, it's like I just enjoy exploring the idea and learning about different people's encounters and kind of listening to them. I mean, essentially struggle to try to make sense of what it is that they saw. So yeah, that's kind of the approach that I'm going to take with that one.
Yeah, I'll never
Bigfoot
forget.
with pants reminds me of Erik Beckshire.
Yeah, very true, very true. And I think there are some historical, especially when you get into some of the stories of the older Sasquatch, there is some confusion with hermits.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, there is some confusion with, and you have to kind of parse the lines on there. Like the Sackett's Harbor one clearly stated it was a naked, hairy, being. The same with the Powell, Vermont of 1859, where the 2 boys were hunting and they saw this and they dropped their muskets and they fled. That was a reddish brown, unclothed, hairy humanoid creature. And it was to the point where Jonas Galusha actually ran on the ticket to capture the wild man in Vermont. And that was actually a gubernatorial pledge, candidate's pledge. And pretty wild stuff when you think about it.
Yeah. Well, and the interesting thing kind of, something I'm actually going to include in the documentary. I'm glad you brought it up, where the Adirondacks are actually famous for having a lot of hermits just living out in the middle of nowhere, basically. And, that guy, I'm sure he's covered in deer hide and bear hide and who knows what, and is coming by to maybe steal a couple of chickens or something. You're very possibly going to mistake him, especially in the 1800s when there's no flashlights or electricity to try to get a good look at whatever it is. I'm trying.
Hey, what's going on? There's my good friend Chuck popping in. Good to see you, brother.
But yeah, there's just certain, like, one thing. I haven't really delved into the editing and starting to write the script and assemble everything yet. But another thing, I interviewed 3 different folks up in near the St. Lawrence Seaway, all within 2 miles of each other, who all had sightings, which that I find super interesting also. You know, unless these three guys decided to get together and try to pull a hoax on me, you know, which seems extremely unlikely. You know, it's just really fascinating that all within a mile or two, there these three different people, and who knows how many others. Because, you know, as I mentioned earlier, I posted a thing in a Facebook group and had like a dozen people sharing their stories with me via Facebook Messenger.
Yep. There is a question from Nick up there.
Yeah,
I know Erik did not because Tim is long past, but have you ever run into Matt? Have you ever run into Tim Fasano?
I kind of discovered him about, let's see, I'm going into my 4th year, so about year 1 near the end, just as I started discovering his channel is when he passed away. And he's the Florida Sasquatch, was his handle. I loved watching his stuff, but he was all drama. He was, I didn't take anything he had as straight up real. He was a cab driver. He got out in the woods a lot. I respect anyone who at least gets out in the woods, whether they're drama or not. It doesn't mean what I mean is they're setting themselves up for an encounter if there's one to be had.
Right.
So I enjoyed that. He was highly entertaining to watch. Loved to watch his channel, but I didn't take much seriousness from him. I thought he was kind of having a lot of fun with it, but enjoyed going out and enjoyed exploring. But no, I never did meet him. But all Ron and Lori had, and some of the other people in Central Florida have told me stories. So
yeah, definitely a strange individual.
He was strange.
Yeah.
Fun though.
Yeah, absolutely. Not a bad guy.
No.
Did he BS a couple of things? I know one thing he did. He created the website, and he actually stole the website from somebody. I think it was the Bigfoot Busters blog. And he all of a sudden one day shot a criticism of me and somebody else. And then I discovered that it was actually Tim using this other gentleman's name that had owned the site previously. Much to his credit, he came clean. He pulled stuff down. We had a conversation, and that was that. I know there was the time he claimed they were knocking on like power lines or something like that, and there was some controversy over that. But you know, Tim was a very interesting cat. He was actually, we did a show where he actually popped on, and I think that was just a few weeks before he had passed away.
Right.
And he came on, said hello, said what he wanted to say, and it was very constructive, and off he went. And before we knew it, you know, he was gone. And the strange thing is that he is buried because his family was actually from Plattsburgh, New York, which is about, you know, an hour and 40 minutes from where I live now. So he's buried in one of the cemeteries up there. I don't have the name of the cemetery, but there's no way of finding out where his grave is necessarily. So I may do that next year, go up there, find his grave, do a little thing about Tim. Kind of in a good way, because I really, the guy did have a kind heart.
Yeah.
Absolutely had a kind heart. Loved animals. And I know before he had passed, he had just adopted this kitten, and he was so in love with this kitten. Kind of sad.
Yeah, with Tim's YouTube channel was I think he was doing it.
Oh yeah. B says did he post an altered photo? Well, I don't know if it was altered, but it may have been. There was that skunk ape head in the swamp. They claimed it was a skunk ape in the swamp. I don't know if that was him that started that or him just kind of promoted that a little bit. I'm not quite sure. During the years of that, we were doing some different. We were actually doing a lot more different things at that time with the channel. So we weren't really on YouTube at all of that time. But since we've gotten on YouTube, we've kind of started. Now we can start showing hoaxes a lot easier and better than say on a blog or like that. by doing a video.
Nobody wants to drag Tim Fasano through the mud.
Absolutely not.
He did have a YouTube channel, and he did use his videos. A lot of them had a dramatic effect,
right?
That would facilitate clicks on YouTube. So maybe that was part of it.
Yeah, and dramatic. I mean, like he would do this thing where he's lost, and you know exactly, because a lot of people had told me kind of the areas I'm working in were overlapping a little bit. So it does a little bit. There's been some crossings where someone said, I ran into Tim where you're at. And I went, oh, really? And so that kind of sparked my interest because, my ego tells me, he at least knew a little something what he was doing then, because I think we're a little ahead of the curve there, working the bottlenecks in the corridors. But
well, there's one of his videos, and I don't remember exactly which one, where he talks about how he's deep in the forest.
Yeah.
And he's looking around, and then you hear just as plain as day a car driving down the road behind him. So he's like 30 feet away from the main highway. So I don't know. After that, you're gonna kind of lose a few viewers. But he was trying to get
that didn't seem to be the case for Expedition Bigfoot, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really wanted to meet him. I was really bothered when I heard of his passing because I was about to the verge of reaching out to him.
Yeah.
And I knew a lot of it was entertainment, but man, he was just a fun character. He made it fun.
Yeah.
His camp blog was great.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
But it's kind of funny.
I'm about to look that up now and see if it's still on YouTube. I hope hopefully it is.
It is.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Somebody asked, is Tim's channel available? Chris is looking that up. Somebody asked, wasn't there a posthumous video from Tim with two supposed Bigfoot walking past him? If there was, I didn't see it. Tim's estate released it after his death? ? Don't know. I haven't really followed anything Tim Fasano since his passing. So
same.
It's still on YouTube. Florida Sasquatch.
Florida
That's what
Sasquatch.
you want to search. Yeah. Florida Sasquatch. At Fasano, Tampa.
Yep, everybody's saying, yep, there it is. Yep, Fasano, Tampa. And so next question, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot here, but what's people think of Stacy Brown's thermal? Is there anything, is it good, bad, indifferent? I mean, I said in the proof is out there, although I don't know if they aired it or not, but I was kind of indifferent to it, that really I don't think a thermal is going to prove a Sasquatch regardless of how good it is. But
yeah, I don't. I'm skeptical of it. I'll say that, I don't. And I one thing I'll definitely say, if I'm remembering correctly, is I think there was a thing where they were like trying to go back in the daylight to get like a size measurement, and basically if you want to do that, you need to get the size measurement or size comparison using that same exact thermal held in the same exact position at the same height off of the ground, which they didn't do, So it's like, if you're
a few feet forward or a few feet back can make a big difference.
Yeah. So that, I mean, that's one of those things where, kind of like to reiterate what you just said, Steve, where it's like getting it on thermal, I mean, they're cool. They're super, those cameras are super cool, but you're essentially with that one, you're just looking at a blob shape, that could, I guess, be anything, I don't know enough about those cameras, but I certainly couldn't for myself identify that footage.
The way I look at it is that he was him and his old man, and they were pretty consistent with their story. So they may have caught something regardless of what it was. But again, it's a very early stage thermal, and it just leaves too much for ambiguity. Is my take on it. Whether it was real, not, we can never tell, and we have to take at the best we can do is either take their word or not.
A thermal is a tool. It's a tool you should use to aid in research. Like if you get a hot spot and you say, "Hey, this looks like I've got something out there walking on two legs. I'm coming back to check out this area."
Right.
You know, it's not going to be like, "Hey, it looks like I got something walking on two legs on thermal. This is proof of Bigfoot." No, that's proof that you need to check out that area a little bit better. But
I'm also skeptical of, like I'll use myself as an example, so I'm not like bad mouthing somebody that I don't know. But like, if I show up 2 months from now or in spring when I release my next documentary, if I have footage of Bigfoot in it, you should be skeptical. Like I'm making a documentary about Bigfoot. It's suspicious that all of a sudden I've now all of a sudden got footage of the creature. What? Not saying it's not possible, but the chances of that happening are not good. Particularly where in my case, I'm making a documentary about it, not actively. My documentary focuses on capturing people telling about their experiences, not me actively looking for it. Like if the small town monsters guys were to find one and get some cool footage, compelling footage, all right, that's a different story. They're out there actively, beating the bushes, so to speak.
So let me predicate this is that I would not necessarily automatically be suspicious of that, because who is going to get the footage? Somebody like a Matt, somebody like a you that's actually out there being a professional in the photo / camera industry, the filmmaking industry. And you're a documentarian. You're not a college student putting out like the Sean Bannon hoax that came out years ago that still gets recirculated now again. The creature of the giant sequoias. That was called. I would not judge that automatically, even being as skeptical as I am of film that comes out. I would not be skeptical of that. It would depend on who was with you at the time. It would depend on their interviews. And it would depend on the openness of, well, this is what I shot the video on. This is when it occurred, what time it occurred, what the weather was. I mean, you start providing that type of information, that's just providing background. That's providing good, solid, verifiable background. Like when I see a video come out, the first thing we always do is, what's the story behind it? Because the story behind it is going to tell me whether or not this is credible video or not, regardless of what is shown on the video. Right. And that's why I think part of the Patterson-Gimlin story has stood up, is because they laid it all out. This is when it happened. This is about the time it happened. This is where it happened. This is how it happened. Yeah. Whereas the hoax videos, something's always missing there a little bit. Like, oh yeah, here's a video we shot, and it was amazing. And I remember actually getting the interstate video hoax of, I want to say this is around 2006, 2007. This kid shot a video, and I immediately got on social media, talked to him about it, and he's like, "Oh man, it was exciting. It was great." Because I asked him, "What can you tell me about the incident?" And that's the only response he had. So then I wrote him right back. I go, "Listen, just from your response, I can tell this is not real. Why did you guys do it?" And then he wrote me right back, "Well, my brother and I were kind of bored, and we just figured we'd play this little joke and have a little fun with it." Boom, done.
I mean, with that said, if I get footage of Bigfoot, I'm definitely sharing it.
Yeah, amen.
Yeah, it wouldn't necessarily. I don't think people should jump to the conclusion that automatically, well, this is fake because he got it while he was doing this documentary on Bigfoot. They did the same thing with Patterson-Gimlin. They said, well, Patterson's footage is fake because him and Bob were out filming for a documentary on Bigfoot that he was making. So
yeah, no, I'm not saying
fake,
that.
yeah.
I just say that initially it makes me question it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
now that I've dived into the topic a little more, the majority of sightings are from people who are doing something entirely different, you know?
Right. You know, the hoaxers are the ones that are film it that are not prepared to film it. You know what I mean? It's always the guy that, oh, I was walking down the street and look, here's the Bigfoot I saw. You know, those are the hoaxers, not the ones that are out there trying to find it necessarily.
Yeah.
Unless your name is, you know, begins with the T and your last name begins with an S.
Well, there's some I saw. I don't remember the name, and if I did, I don't want to call them out anyway. But I mean, there's one YouTube channel. It's like I almost feel like it's like Bigfoot cosplay, and I can't believe that I think they had like 50,000 subscribers, and I'm like, good God, like are these people like laughing at this every day when they or every week or however often they put out a video? Like it's like so obviously BS, you know?
Right. That's the ones, Eric, those channels that you can go and they have a new video posted every day of Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Like, wow, these guys are just the luckiest people on earth, you know.
Or as Matt would say, you're talking in the documentary, or quote unquote Bigfoot evidence. And Matt, you very well describe the dilemma of tree structures and tree bends and tree breaks.
Yeah.
And I think that was brilliant the way you pointed that out.
Well, and I can get away with it because as a photojournalist and a / fine artist, I am working on a fine art exhibition of tree structures. And what's interesting about it, about 2 years ago, I just started calling it forest language. And the way I'm going to present it in portfolio reviews is basically I have all of these things happening, which 9 out of 10 of us on all these channels would say Bigfoot, 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 Bigfoot. It's just interesting nature to me. So I still stop. I still look at it. But as I was pointing it out to Erik, a lot of what people see will just be one break and they say, this is Bigfoot. And I've always said it takes 3, 4, or 5 things in an area for me to trigger Bigfoot on the brain. And what's funny is, as I was showing it to Erik, I looked across the road and there's 3 bends, 10, 15 feet off the ground, 3 big pine sapling bends along with the break. And I was saying, see, people call this Bigfoot, but is it? And that's what I like working with Max, because he will like totally. And so I had to find a way to still stop. Like, what are you shooting? Why are you shooting that? I went, I'm doing a fine art project. Now it's okay. And so I can work around that. But I do have some tree structures that I can't explain. And one of them is a Y branch that we found inverted on a trail on a oak sapling 30 minutes after I made a joke. Wouldn't it be cool if we found this in a tree? Now, I'm not saying it was Bigfoot, but what the hell? I make a joke about a small Y branch this big. Max was with us on that time. And I make a joke and stick it in a tree and said, there's people coming up behind me. That's bad. That's hoaxing. And I took it down, threw it on the ground. And then we find a 4-foot version of the same Y branch stuck in a tree over the tree. And I'm the last one walking up and they go, Matt, look up. And I went, what? And I just like chills. I mean, I can't explain that again. So I just started calling it unexplained, but I shot it. But to me, it's forest language.
Right.
And
to me, being the person in the woods for so long, looking like if there's a tree bend in an area, I would expect there be other tree bends in the area, because if there was a weather event that had occurred, say that a bunch of trees got knocked down and eventually the trees rot away, or they're on the ground, they rot away, and they knock over a bunch of trees and they bend them. Well, that would make a lot of sense why you have 2 or 3 or 4 of these bends in one area. Where I find it particularly interesting is where there's one bend and that's it. And then you have to try to find the source of that. because weather events happen in clusters. So if you have straight winds in an area, you should expect to find tree fall that knocks over and bends trees, arcs them. Conversely, you don't have this problem in Florida like we do in the Northeast and central country part of the country, is ice storms, which will bend trees. And depending on how cold and what time of year those ice storms happen, when the ice goes, the tree has been bent over for so long, it stays that way. Yep. So there's a lot of those, in the Adirondacks, especially. You can go over there and find tree bends everywhere.
We get a lot of ice in Kentucky in the wintertime.
Right. What I do find interesting is when I find a tree or a small branch that has been inverted into the ground with its roots clearly visible, pointing upwards, and around them is twisted a vine. I have found that, and that is something I cannot explain other than could it be bushcraft? I doubt it because of where it was and why it was and what its purpose was. But
yeah, there's a lot of bushcraft that people are showing, and until I started researching bushcraft and the different types of bushcraft, and it's not that hard to do. It's out there. That's what a lot of people are seeing it. I did a share of this. This is something Max and I found, and I have taken about, I don't know if you can share screen, but
sure can.
I can't explain this one. And that is 4 living trees all on the ground, pushed into formation. The bottom is 27 feet. If you were to draw a circle around it, it was like 24 foot of a interior base circumference. The height is about 24 feet to the apex. And then it goes at least 30 feet, all the trees past that. I can't explain that. And I ended up taking 5 other people that like to get out and look at stuff. And I tell you, one of them was Stan from the Bigfoot Mafia. And Stan's not into structures at all. And he explained this one perfectly. He just said, this one to me is an anomaly. I can't explain it.
Yeah, that definitely does not look like a weather event at all. That 100%.
And here's the thing, Steve. We went out about 70 yards in circumference from this. And there is no other disturbance in the woods. And to me, so that was interesting. And it's it can be difficult to get to. You're going through a lot of snakes. You're going through a power line. It's about 30 yards off a power line. Between the power line and that structure and another 80 yards is a creek. It's just at an interesting location and a very interesting place that is off grid. Wow. So I can't explain this. And I've seen smaller teepees in the height of 2 feet in 5 different states that I photograph that literally look like this, but smaller, but usually built out of a sapling. And the center one here is a palm that goes another 40, 50 feet past the apex of this. I just call this one the teepee in the corridor. But, 7 people have put eyes on it, and no one has explained this to me. And the only explanation I can come up with is having watched a tree grow about the same size. If you see that big mass behind it, that's real wide, that's at least 20 feet wide. That is an old oak tree that is snapped off about 30 feet high. So imagine back, and I went on live with Nikki on this, and I wanted to show Nikki it on a live, and I said, man, this is the teepee in the corridor. I can't explain this. I had 6 people with me that day, and we were trying to, and I think Erik used a little bit of this footage in there. No one gave me a plausible explanation of what they thought it was. But imagine 60 years ago, 70 years ago, and I know the history of this area. I know what was happening 60, 70 years ago. you know, what would the size of those trees, what would they be? That's in an area that floods, the grounds get soft. Could those trees have been pushed in position like 40, 50, 60 years ago? And I've never run anything. Yep. I've never ran anything across that looked like it was historic in nature. Like, you know,
yeah.
Florida archaeology back, you know, it could have been 60 to 100 years ago, pushed in position when the ground was wet because they're all still in the ground. So there is no way anything did anything to those in the last 50, 60 years. That's a fact. But 60, 70 years ago, they would have been 20 foot tall with wet ground. The area floods. Could they just be leaned in position? And what was going on in this area 70, 80 years ago? It starts getting interesting to me. But I've never run anything like that where I started thinking that a time period was involved with a stick structure. They're usually always built like, you know, bushcraft within a week. This one's a little different, but I'm finding miniature versions of those that if you weren't looking for them, you would walk right past them. And I think a lot of people are, but what I'm seeing is 1 to 2 foot versions of those. And again, Georgia, Kentucky, right there at the Pinnacles, Chris. I found one at the Pinnacles. Mm-hmm. I found 3 in Florida. I found one in Macon. And I'm seeing them all the time, and they're nothing that anyone would pay any attention to. And so when I start talking about forest language, I've always said, don't rule out the possibility that like Indian tree bends, you know, and I'm finding a lot of those in really cool places, especially Kentucky, across the river from Fort Boonesboro. There's one in a person's front yard right next to a mailbox across from Fort Boonesboro. I think the road's called 4 Mile Road or 7 Mile Road. Mm-hmm. Very fascinating. So I've always been into the Indian tree bends. So I'm wondering, is it something like that people are just walking by and not paying attention to? And it would have to be something so just nondiscreet that, again, unless you kind of caught the forest language and have been looking at it, trying to read it, you would miss it. And I know a few people who have, Max has seen it. Max has seen several of them. And so we talk about this all the time, along with, you know, sticks in the mud. I don't think of anything about sticks in the mud. I have sticks falling out of my oak tree in the backyard, sticking in the ground.
Right.
Every time it rains. I don't look at those at all. But I do look at these little 2 foot tall teepees, and I've never found one quite like this one. So I'm still perplexed. So I like calling it forest language. Nothing possibly to do with Bigfoot, but man, it's fun to get out there and explore this.
Well,
yeah,
it would be, I tell you what's interesting me about it is that if that structure was man-made, maybe by tying some trees together at the top and then maybe putting a wrap around it for some sort of temporary shelter, that would have had to been done maybe 80 years ago or more.
Exactly.
While the trees were very small, you know.
Exactly.
But now, there is a what is it called? What are they called? There was a guy that did he called them circus trees, and he took a bunch of young trees when they were young, and he tied them and combined them and wrapped them, twisted them in different ways, and while they were young, and as they grew, you know, they maintained that shape, those twists and stuff. Except now, you know, they're 30 feet tall, and so that idea does have merit. But the cool thing is, if it was man-made or other, it's something done like 70, 80, 90 years ago.
My guess is probably more Indian-made. We have a strong Indian population right where the corridor is. You have the Calusa, you have the Toboggan, or I can't pronounce it. There's 3 different tribes that were heavily into Florida. I just posted a book on my Instagram that I bought, similar to the book I had back in college, back in the 70s on Florida archaeology. But they do not talk about, they talk about the shell middens. They do not talk about tree structures at all, nor is hairy man or Bigfoot mentioned in it. Very, very interesting though. But it does talk about the dugouts and transportation and why the waterways are the their highways back in the day. And you have to kind of know that stuff. And that's why I'm kind of in the corridor. Is it only makes sense, but I think that's probably more possibly Indian based, especially where it's at, than anything else.
Hey guys, guess what time it is?
It is not 10 o'clock. Look 11, at that.
Yeah, it's 11.
Central. I'm on Central.
Yeah.
You're living in the past, brother. That's an hour.
Yeah.
That's so 1 hour ago.
So Matt, let's do this real quick. Matt, where can we find your YouTube channel for those who are tuning in for the first time?
My collection of what I've it's Central Florida Bigfoot on YouTube and Central Florida Bigfoot on Instagram. I have about 7-8 videos in the can that I decided not to produce. I've just pretty much, I'm going to save it. I think Erik has inspired me to be a future documentarian. So I think I'm going to release that as my 4-year journey, which I said I was going to end at some point all along. So I'm going to try to make it professional and make something for Amazon Prime and do it right. And it's going to bring all this discussion that all of the so-called thinkers have had. It's going to be very revealing because I'm going to tell it in my story. You guys know me. I don't talk or narrate on all of my stuff, but it's going to be that all the way through and cover the whole 4 years and the places I've gone and let you know why I'm there, what I'm thinking, what I'm seeing that kept me going for 4 years, leading up to Erik and what's happening down and me winding down, and then the eventual move to Kentucky. I don't know what I'm going to do when I'm in Kentucky. I'll always be in the woods. I'll always be running 2 or 3 devices, but I'm not necessarily going to be under a Bigfoot handle. I'll be a documentary filmmaker. I'm going to cross that path. I'm going to cross that bridge, and it's going to be on a lot of topics, kind of similar to what Erik is doing. So,
and very good. Now, Erik, tell us, where can we find your website and other work?
Well, my website is eks.tv. You can check out my YouTube channel. I have a lot of variety of topics. Interviews with homeless people. I've done interviews with Andean shamans, a few Bigfoot videos, a bunch of videos on history, and that's basically just my name, Erik K. Swanson.
And where can we find? Obviously, we can find searching for Skunk Ape, Florida's Bigfoot on Amazon. The link is down below in the show description as well, so you can click on that and catch that. Chris, do your thing, brother.
Well, again, I want to thank Erik and Matt for being on here. Erik, that's a great documentary.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for releasing that. I want to thank everybody in chat. You guys are the greatest audience we could ever hope to have. We thank you and we love y'all. If it's your first time watching on YouTube, remember to hit that like, share, subscribe button. It really helps out the algorithm. That's right. Ring the bell. Bing.
Ring the bell. And remember, share. Sharing is caring. Okay, folks, and on behalf of me and everybody here, I want to thank our guests. What a fun time it's been. Great discussion tonight. We'll wish everybody a great, safe week. Next week, we already have the guests lined up. That'll be going out to our membership midweek of who our next guest will be, and you guys will just have to wait and find out if you're not a member till Sunday afternoon. As far as that will probably be the last show of the year because the next 2 Sunday nights fall on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. So I don't know if we want to do a New Year's Eve show. I don't know. We'll talk about that. Probably not. We want to enjoy the libations. And so we have one more show left for the year. That's next week. Then but we will be cutting some videos in December. After that point, there'll be, long form videos, not live streams. So anyway, again, everybody have a great week. Be safe, stay healthy, God bless, and of course, keep on Squatch. We'll catch you all next week, Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on Squatch-D TV.
Hey folks, you've been watching Squatch-D TV. Join us each week, Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for the latest on the Bigfoot mystery. As always, we thank you for being our loyal viewers and encourage all to subscribe to our YouTube page at youtube.com/Steve Kulls. As always, have a great week. Stay safe. God bless and keep on squatching.